Mam Krishna Prayabhuti Chandatare Sarvasya Chaura Hridaya Pujayami Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare
Shri Shri Chaurashtakam ki jai. Purushottam Mas ki jai. All the Vaishnavis ki jai. Thank you, Janavi, Tulsi, Radhakund, Varshana, and Kushum and Rai. Thank you, girls. That was beautiful.
There are 5 girls,
Thank you.
right?
Yeah, so and Rai, 6, right? So this is Janavi, Tulsi, Radhakund, Varshana, Kushum, and Rai.
Okay, Haribol.
Oh, Mayuri? See Mayuri? Mayuri's there?
Oh, no, we can see. Who's this? Mayuri? Oh, we can see Mayuri. Sorry. Haribo. Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for joining in our ongoing discussion on the Bhagavad Gita. Today we will resume the discussion from the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So we are moving right along, coming towards the end of the second section. So we'll do the Manglacharan and then start with the discussion. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we will start with the recap, and if I can ask you to mute. I think there's some static coming. So as usual, we'll start with a quick recap of the 10th chapter. So we are in the middle part of the Bhagavad Gita, and the mnemonics for the 6 chapters are KAM, OUD. So K is the knowledge of the absolute. A is attaining the supreme. M is the most confidential knowledge. O is the opulence of the absolute. Today we are doing the 11th chapter, U, which is the universal form. And the last section is devotional service. It's the one of the most concentrated, sweet, and also the shortest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So today we are doing the chapter 11. So recap from the last week's discussion. The 2 sections of the chapter 10 were K and O, which is knowing the unknowable. And this was essentially included the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita, in which Krishna describes his relationship. And then the second part is the the bulk of the chapter where Krishna speaks about his various opulences. So Krishna introduces this as more than most confidential. So if you remember, the title of the 9th chapter was the most confidential. And it was most confidential because Krishna reveals the secret and potency of bhakti in the 9th chapter. In the 10th chapter, it's called even more confidential because there is the further details of that which Krishna has already spoken about. So it also talks about Krishna's reciprocation, that how Krishna from within the heart gives the knowledge by which his devotees are able to perform bhakti and attain him. So previously Krishna has spoken about his partiality and his preference, but now he speaks about the details. Yeah, what does it mean that Krishna is partial? Doesn't mean that Krishna is partial, so his devotees commit sinful activities and Krishna says, okay, doesn't matter, it's my devotee. The partiality means that in all other relationships, Krishna is the neutral reciprocator. That as one approaches Krishna, Krishna responds in that way. If one approaches Krishna for material piety, Krishna bestows the commensurate amount of material piety. If one approaches Krishna in the mood of an enemy, then Krishna becomes an enemy. But for devotees, the reciprocation is not proportional. For a little bit of bhakti, Krishna gives a lot of mercy. And that is why it is called more than the most confidential. So the Chaturshloki carries the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita carries the essence of the Vedas. So the Bhagavad Gita is also known as the Gita Upanishad. And these four verses, essentially are also the summation of the entire Vedas. Therefore, they are considered to be very potent. And mnemonic to remember them is, so at least amongst Vaishnavas, the number 108 is considered very auspicious. So sannyasis will have the name Om Shri Shri 108 Vishnupad something, for the auspiciousness of the 108 number. When we chant on our beads, a mala has 108 beads on it. So the Chaturshloki verses, they come from chapter 10, verse 8. So they are 8, 9, 10, and 11. So it's an easy way for us to remember where does the essence of the Gita and the essence of the scriptures come from. 10.8. And it makes the 3 points that Krishna is the source of everything. Knowing this, his devotees worship him. And then Krishna reciprocates by enlightening them from within and destroying their knowledge, the ignorance, and giving them knowledge. So that essentially is the essence of the Gita and the Vedas. So as terms, as principles, when we first start imbibing them, it's very potent because we first understand them as principles and then we start putting it into practice. That yes, Krishna is everything. And based on that, our activities are aligned to that understanding. That's the second of the Chaturshloki. And the third and the fourth, so Krishna takes the bulk of the work on himself. He says that I am the one who gives them the knowledge. I am the one who destroys ignorance from within. So all we have to do is to develop our mood of devotion for Krishna, and Krishna will reciprocate. So how does Krishna progressively reveal himself? So we saw that in the 10th chapter, in the opulence of the Absolute, Krishna presented himself as that I am in everything. I am the essence of everything. I am the best of everything. In the 11th chapter, which we'll do today, he will say that everything is present in me as a universal form. And then finally, he will say that I am a distinct individual in the 12th chapter. So putting these three together, it gives us the complete understanding of Krishna's relationship with the world. He's within everything, everything is within him, yet he is distinct and separate. Why does Arjuna ask Krishna's opulences? Because Krishna can be easily accessed through them. So Krishna talks about his material opulence. He talks about how he is amongst the animals, he is the lion, amongst men, he is king, amongst the purifiers, he is sun, amongst the rivers, he is Ganges, amongst the bodies of water, he is the ocean. So these are all things that are around us. And Krishna is giving us opportunities to link them with him. So they're like mnemonics. So the mnemonics, they carry a nugget of truth in them, and they're easily accessible. So when Krishna says that amongst men he is king, the king is considered to be the foremost amongst men. It's not that the king is Krishna, or it's not that Krishna is only the king and no one else, but that relationship of being the foremost and the predominant. When we look at the king and we think about that relationship, then it allows us an opportunity to think about Krishna. And Krishna has been consistently doing that. He did that in the 7th chapter, he did that in the 9th chapter, and now he does that in the 10th chapter. So he's giving us, he understands that the jivas in the material world have a propensity to turn away from Krishna, Bahirmukhi. That's why we came down to the material world, because we have the propensity to turn away from Krishna. So he's saying, fine, you have turned away from me, but that to which you have turned, I am that also. So there is no getting away from me. And how does Krishna present his opulences? So this we discussed, that he says he's the best of everything, or he's the essence of everything. So quick summation of the 10th chapter. So when one understands that Krishna is inconceivable, then one begins to serve him. As long as one tries to equate Krishna to either himself or to factors that are within his grasp, then there will always be this sense of competition and envy and pride. But when one understands that Krishna is beyond comprehension, then the mood of devotion takes root. This is then the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is the source and essence of everything. His devotees serve him with love. In reciprocation, Krishna gives them the understanding to attain and destroys all kinds of ignorances. So the kind of ignorances that the conditioned soul is generally under is ignorance about the self, about who am I? Am I the soul? Am I the body? Am I just a combination of chemicals? Am I God? And there is ignorance about Krishna. That is, Krishna is just a great personality, is a historical personality. Is he one of the incarnations of Vishnu? Who exactly is Krishna? Then ignorance about relationship. How am I related to Krishna? Should Krishna serve me or should I serve Krishna? Will I become Krishna or is our eternal relationship a service? And then finally, how to attain the relationship. So all these ignorances that are there in the conditioned soul, Krishna progressively destroys. And to begin with, he provides us various ways to understand his greatness. So we see the last point loops into the first point. So iteratively, as we understand more and more of Krishna, Krishna reveals more and more of himself. Okay, then we have the verse. Do we have any volunteers to?
Prabhu, can I? Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me. Yeah. Please go ahead.
yeah. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upyanti te.
Very good.
Those who constantly serve me with love and devotion, I give them understanding by which they can come to me.
Excellent. Flawless. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. So we now start with the 11th chapter, titled The Universal Form. And quick recap of the flow of the conversation so far. That Krishna concluded the 6th chapter, which is Dhyan Yoga, by glorifying the yogi who thinks of him in Samadhi. And then in the 7th chapter, which is the knowledge of the Absolute, Krishna gives information about himself. So you remember this chapter was divided into 2 sections, knowing Krishna and not knowing Krishna. So he talks about the 4 kinds of people who know Krishna, 4 kinds of people who do not know Krishna. And also he gives information, preliminary information about himself in connection with the material world. Then in the 8th chapter, which is attaining the Supreme, Krishna talks about how to reach him. And this is all about developing Krishna consciousness, essentially at the time of death. So Krishna makes this point that whatever one thinks of at the time of death, one becomes that. And one thinks of me, then one comes to me. So this chapter was divided into 2 sections, attaining Krishna and destination. The various destination of people with different consciousness. Then the 9th chapter, which is the most confidential knowledge, Krishna speaks about the Achinta Bheda Bheda. He talks about how he is simultaneously one and different with the material world. How everything rests on him, but yet he is separate. And then he talks about knowing him. And finally, in the concluding part of the chapter, he gives so many assurances to his devotees. That even if you do the most abominable activity, I will protect you. Do not fear. I will preserve what you have and carry what you lack. He asks Arjun, declare it boldly, my devotees will never perish. So one thing that you will notice here, and when we go to the next screen, you also notice that in all the chapters, there is a focus on knowing Krishna. 7th chapter is knowing Krishna and not knowing Krishna. 8th chapter is attaining the Supreme, which is Krishna consciousness and the destination. 9th chapter is Achinta Bheda Bhed Tattva, which is knowing Krishna. The middle section is again knowing Krishna. Then in the 10th chapter, which is again in two parts, knowing Krishna and opulences, Krishna, he reveals the Chatushloki, and then he talks about himself. So through all the 6 chapters in the middle section of the Bhagavad Gita, the focus is knowing Krishna. And the understanding is that when one knows Krishna, one will love Krishna. The two are synonymous. Even though one is an activity of intellect or mind and the other is that of the heart, but because Krishna is Shuddha Sattva, Krishna is intensified, concentrated bliss, Anandmay. He is the personification of love. So when one knows Krishna, then one will love Krishna. And those who do not love Krishna, they do not know Krishna. So that is why Krishna is progressively revealing himself. That is why Krishna's assurances that I will be helping you to know me is so potent. Because knowing Krishna is loving Krishna. And loving Krishna means you're now situated in your eternal position. So we now move on to the 11th chapter. So the connection between the 10th and the 11th chapter is that at the end of the 10th chapter, when after describing all his opulences, Krishna tells Arjun that what is the need for all this? Just know that with a single fragment of myself, I pervade the entire universe. So while Krishna had given those 86 opulences he gives, but he also says that these are just, they're just a dot in a dot, because my opulences are unlimited. And then he summarizes and he says that just know that with a single fragment, which means by a very small portion of myself, I pervade the entire universe. And Arjun requests to see that fragment of Krishna that pervades the universe, which essentially is the universal form of Krishna. So the chapter titled The Universal Form is divided into 3 sections. The first is request by Arjun. The second section, which is the bulk of it, is a description of the universal form of Krishna. And the concluding part is prayers by Arjun after seeing the universal form. So the mnemonic for this is RUP, which is easy to remember because this is Vishvarupa. So this is RUP. So in the past, we have seen that Krishna has been progressively revealing himself. So in the chapter 9, through Achinta Bheda Bhed Tattva, he explains how he is simultaneously within and not within. How he is in the material world, but he is separate. And he does that so that there is no confusion when Krishna talks about his material opulences or when Krishna talks about his universal form. Because the universal form is loved by the impersonalists. Because it goes to reinforce their assertion that what do they say? Jagat Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. That Brahman is the only truth and everything else is an illusion, which is different from the Vaishnava conception, that they say the material world is also true. It's just temporary. But it cannot be an illusion because it is connected to Krishna. But that's the point that Krishna wants to put away right from the beginning. That so there is no confusion later on about all these things when Krishna says that I am the taste of the water, or I am the river, and I am the mountain, Himalaya. So one should not say, when Krishna says I am the Himalaya, one should not say Himalaya is Krishna and start worshipping Himalaya as Krishna, or start worshipping the king as God. So that's why he first gives the philosophical basis to clarify any confusion. Then he talks about in the 10th chapter how he is in everything. In the 11th chapter, he will talk about how everything is in Krishna. And 12th chapter, he will talk about just Krishna and his relationship with the devotees. So first he's talking through Nyaya, he's talking through logic. He tries to explain through the analogy of the wind in the sky, how the sky contains the wind, but still the sky has nothing to do with the wind. So he explains through logic. And in the 10th chapter, he's explaining through analogies that just like the king is the best amongst the humans, I'm the best. Just like the Ganges, most pious amongst the rivers, I'm the most pious. Through analogies, he's explaining his position. Now he is giving direct vision. So Arjun has this tendency to be very, very practical. And he always asks that in a philosophy, give me something that I can take home. So that's why Arjun has been listening to the philosophy in the 9th chapter, to the analogies in the 10th chapter. Now he's like, show me the money. Show me who you really are. And Krishna, of course, reciprocates. And he shows to Arjun his universal form. So this is the major discussion that is there in the 11th chapter. So before we start with the first section, let me just pause and see if there is any comments or discussion based on what we have discussed so far, or previous lecture.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hari Bol, Prabhu.
Again, just to take some inference from everything that you said is so relevant. Everything in Krishna, Krishna in everything, and swaying away from so-called the right thing, or what needs to be done, to also you want to go away from that and do something different, that also you'll find him there. I think the interesting point there, Prabhu, is that when we really believe that, even if we go away from doing the right thing, which is very swabhavik, you will always find him. And when you find him there, he's actually present. And when you see him there, you just can't do it. Even if he has allowed you to do it, it's not that you are getting caught red-handed. It's just that you just can't do it. He just looks at you in such a smiley face, and very spontaneously, without any effort, without any feeling guilty or anything. You just can't do it. So I like that part of it when he says that, you do what you want to do, but you'll also find me there, right? It's like he's in everything and everything is in him. It's just phenomenal. Just wanted to say that a little bit. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for your realizations. Okay. So let us continue with our first section of 11th chapter. So this is the request by Arjun. Okay. So in the previous chapters, I think somebody needs to mute themselves. So there's some feedback coming in. Thank you. So in the previous chapters, Arjun has been listening with rapt attention as Krishna has been successively revealing himself more and more philosophically, empirically, and now he is like intellectually I'm able to understand, but can I see something? Is there something that I can finally put my arms around? Now, of course, he doesn't put his arm on the universal, but just the concept of something that he can engage his senses with. So he's asking to see the material manifestation. And there are some other reasons also why Arjun asked to see the form. So the first is the nature of a devotee. That if you develop affection for somebody, then it's natural for you to want to know more and more. So like in I'm sure it's there in the US also. In India, there are people who are big fans of cricket, and they carry so many statistics with them about the players. This person made 10 centuries, and his highest score was so much, and so many times he did this. That's just because they have so much of affection. So they carry so many of details. So similarly, when devotees develop affection for the Lord, they want to know more and more. So Arjun just wants to, Krishna gave him that segue. And Krishna says that with a single fragment, I pervade the entire universe. And Arjuna is like, can I see that? So it's the natural inquisitiveness of a devotee out of affection. Then he also wants to show beyond doubt that Krishna is indeed God. So in the 10th chapter, Arjun, after hearing the Chaturshloki, with repeatedly, and vociferously, he claims that I now accept you as God. Not only me, but other great personalities also accept you as God. But now he wants to further embellish that. Beyond doubt, he wants to show that Krishna is God by asking Krishna to show his universal form. And then Prabhupada says that to establish a standard for future gods. So Prabhupada says that Arjun knew that in the age of Kali, there will be many people who will be claiming to be God. So if they are indeed God, then they should show the universal form. Once there was actually this discussion that happened that during Prabhupada's time, there was a very famous Baba in southern part of India, and he would openly say that I am God. In fact, he would call himself Bhagwan such and such. He had a huge following, really, um, uh, to the point that he established an entire town just based on his followers. And somebody asked him, that is he God? Prabhupada said, has he shown the universal form? So in order to establish the standard, when Mahaprabhu came, even though he denied that he was God, but he still showed the universal form to his devotees, like when the Mahaprakash Leela was there. So these are some of the reasons why Arjun, keeping his eye on posterity, he requests Krishna to show the universal form. So the important thing to understand is that this was not in the mood of doubting. This was not in the mood of saying that, okay, I think I believe you, but if you do this one thing, then I will believe you a little bit more. It was not in that mood, but it was in this mood of strong affection. And also Arjuna, as taking his duty or responsibility as establishing the parampara, also wanted to establish the credentials that this is who God is, and only Krishna can be God. So this is essentially the first section of the chapter. So in response to the prayers by Arjun, Krishna then he reveals his universal form. Now, before he reveals the universal form, Krishna tells Arjun that you will not be able to see with your present eyes. So he says that I bestow upon you the divine vision by which you can see this form of mine. Now, Krishna was standing right in front of Arjun, and Arjun was seeing Krishna. And if the universal form is a part of Krishna, then why isn't that Arjun could see the universal form with the eyes by which he was already seeing Krishna? And Prabhupada mentions the reason for that is that devotees like Arjun, they have no interest per se in seeing the universal form of Krishna. So it's like when the judge comes home and he becomes the doting grandfather, then the grandchild, he is completely satisfied with that form of the grandfather. The form of the father who's crawling on his knees or tossing the children or running around playing with them. They're not interested in seeing the grandfather sit in the court with the formal robes and pronouncing the death sentence on somebody. They have no interest in that. So Arjun was a devotee of the highest caliber. He has to be, because he is an eternal associate of Krishna. So per se, he has no interest in the universal form. But Krishna says that because you have asked to see it, let me give you the vision by which you can see it. So what does Arjun says? I've just picked up some snippets to give a sense of what Arjun says. It's a very poetic chapter with pictures being painted by words. So Arjun, he sees unlimited mouths, unlimited eyes, unlimited wonderful visions. The form was decorated with many celestial ornaments and bore many divine upraised weapons. He wore celestial garlands and garments, and many divine scents were smeared over his body. All was wondrous, brilliant, unlimited, all expanding. if hundreds of thousands of suns were to rise at once into the sky, their radiance might resemble the effulgence of the Supreme Person in that universal form. So Srila Vyasadeva is here trying to attempt to do the impossible. That he is trying to describe something that is indescribable and that is beyond our comprehension. So if I have seen a tree and then somebody comes to me and says that I went to the redwood forest in Seattle and I saw the sequoia trees, and then describes that those trees, they're so big and they are so tall and their roots are like that, I can get a sense because I have a reference. I know what trees look like. These are just bigger, taller, much wider. But there's no reference for the universal form. There is no experience that can be extrapolated to comprehend it. So Vyasadeva is essentially taking what we have experience with and then trying to paint the picture with words. And Vyasadeva, being Vyasadeva, he does an excellent job. But then this is also an important point for us, that ultimately this is what it is. This is Srila Vyasadeva trying to convey something that is beyond our comprehension. So like this painting that has been made, the artist who made the painting, he read the 11th chapter. He had a lot of discussions with Srila Prabhupada, and then based on that, he made this picture. But then it is again it's a conception. So important for us is to take it in that mode and not too literally. That the universal form has many weapons there, or there are many helmets and garlands there. So they're all there, but there is something much more than that. So that's why Vasudev says that if hundreds and thousands of suns were to rise at once in the sky, so we have experience of one sun rising. Now we extrapolate it 100,000 times, and he says that radiance it will resemble the effulgence of the Supreme Person. And what else does Arjuna say? He says the host of demigods are surrendering before Krishna and entering into him. Some of them are very much afraid and offering prayers with folded hands. Hosts of great sages and perfected beings, crying all peace, are praying to you by singing the Vedic hymns. So all kinds of people. So demigods, they reach the position through perfectly performing karmakand. Then the great sages, they reach the position by either Gyan or Astanga. And perfected beings are those who have perfected themselves through bhakti. So all kinds of people, whether they are following the path of karma or Gyan or Astan or bhakti, they're all surrendering to Krishna through the process of following the Vedas. And then prominent personalities, Lord Shiva, the Adityas, the Vasus, the Sadhyas, the Vishwadevs, the Ashwini Kumars, the Maruts, the Pitras, the Gandharvas, Yakshas, Asuras, the perfected demigods. So they're beholding in wonder. Which means that it's not just us for whom the universal form is beyond comprehension. Even for personalities as great as Lord Shiva. The Lord Shiva is called Mahadev. So Mahadev means that He is beyond the demigods. He is beyond the devas. Brahma takes shelter of Lord Shiva. So even Lord Shiva is regarding the universal form and wonderment. So Krishna is beyond comprehension. But yet Krishna is within comprehension when he chooses to reveal himself. Although you are one, you spread throughout the sky and the planets and all the space between. So when Krishna showed his universal form, he shows his form in two subtle ways, but two ways. The first is called the Vishvarupa, which is the description of Krishna over the vast entirety of space. Essentially, in the material world, there are two things. There is space and there is time. So one's existence is predicated on these two things. That at a particular point in space, at a particular point in time, there is an event that is occurring, or a person who is existing there. So Krishna, when he talks about the universal form, he will talk about it in these two contexts. That the entire space is within me, and then in the next, he will say that all time is within me. Which is another way of saying is that everything that you can imagine in the material world, from a perspective of space or time, is within me. So now Krishna shows his Kal Roop. So as Arjuna is beholding the Vishwaroop of Krishna, now he sees Krishna in the form of time. And Krishna in the form of time is scary. Because what is the nature of time? That time is the ultimate killer. Everything is destroyed eventually by time. So Arjuna sees all the sons of Dhritarashtra and the kings that were allied with the Kauravas, prominent personalities like Bhishma, Drona, and Karna. So they were rushing into the mouth of the universal form, and he sees them being literally chewed to death. That is, their heads are being smashed between the teeth of the Kal Roop. And then he says that as the river flows into the ocean, these great warriors, they enter blazing into your mouth. So not just these prominent personalities, but the soldiers from his side, the other side, they are all rushing into the Kal Roop, the personification of time, which is the personification of death. And then he starts fearfully praying to Krishna that, "O Vishnu, I see you devouring all people from all sides with your flaming mouths, covering all the universe with your effulgence. You are manifest with terrible scorching rays." So the point he's making is that there is no escaping you. As Vishwaroop, you are covering the entire universe. As Kal Roop, you are past, present, and future. So everything, everywhere, at all points of time is Krishna. So now then Arjuna asks that, "O Lord of Lords, so fierce of form, please tell me who you are. I offer my obeisances unto you. Please be gracious to me. You are the primal Lord. I want to know about you. for I do not know what your mission is. Now, this question by Arjun is more in the context of what your mission is. Because Krishna has already revealed his identity to Arjun, and Arjun has accepted it. But now he is saying that as the universal destroyer, what is it that you want to do? And the reason Arjun is asking is so that he can align his own efforts to that of the Lord. So he's not being opportunistic that Krishna is here, so let me get a glimpse into the future. Sometimes you'll see that in India that actually I saw this in the US. It was interesting. We had this Rath Yatra on the Capitol, in front of the US Capitol, and one of the sannyasis was sitting over there. So it was one of those tents, the Q&A tents, and another person, Indian person, came in, and yeah, he said, "You're a Krishna devotee, yes. You have firm faith in Krishna, yes." And then he says that, "Can you tell me what I'm thinking?" And then the sannyasi says that I have no interest in what you are thinking, and I have no way to know what you're thinking. So he says, "Oh, so that means you have no powers." He said, "Yes. If you ask me that way, yes, I have no powers." Then he went away. And then the sannyasi was laughing, and he was saying that he was sharing something that Prabhupada had said, that people tend to cheapen spirituality in this way. That they see a spiritual person, and then they ask them to perform these parlor tricks. That how many stones do I have in my hand? Or tell me what will happen to me tomorrow? Or what is the first letter in my name? So they're essentially reducing spirituality to cheap parlor tricks. So that's not Arjun's reason that he's saying that, okay, I have access to Krishna, let me get a little bit of a glimpse into the future. He's asking so that he knows what is expected out of him. How can he serve the Lord? And then what does Krishna say? This is one of the statements that Prabhupada would quote to scare people, actually. Krishna said, "Kalu asmi." Says, time I am. So time is synonymous to death. So Prabhupada would say that for those who do not take to Krishna consciousness, Krishna is Kalu asmi. He is inevitable death. Now there is death for devotees also. But in chapter 8, Krishna has already explained that when somebody dies thinking of me, the person does not take birth again. So if the person is not taking birth again, that means there is no death. The person is being reinstated to the original position. But for those who do not, Kalu asmi, time I am. And he says, with the exception of you, the Pandavas, I have come to destroy everyone. And Krishna is doing that. We have experience of that. We see around us so many forms of destruction that are happening. If you read the history book, it's all about dead people. So many dead people that we read about. And if that is not sufficient, we are experiencing death in our body every day. In the Bhagavatam, it is said that by the rising and the setting of the sun, our life is shortened. With every breath that we take, we are one breath close to our death. So we are experiencing that in ourselves also. Krishna is Kalu asmi. So why does Krishna say, time I am? Because time is the predominant factor that instills fear in the material world. Everybody in the material world is especially humans, but everybody is trying to fight time. How? By becoming immortal. So since the beginning of the recorded history, there has been somebody or someone working on how to reverse old age, how to fight diseases, how to extend the life, not die. In the science section of the Times magazine, so many articles are there that there is this aging enzyme that they have identified, and if they are able to neutralize that aging enzyme, then immortality is around the corner. There's so much of preoccupation with time. It's a predominating factor. And despite all the efforts, everything and everyone is eventually destroyed by time. Not just people, but things. So many things have been made. So many civilizations were there, and they are now in the dust. And things that are being made now, in the future, they will be in the dust. So people, objects, everything is being destroyed by time. And now Krishna is not really saying that to scare us. There's some component of that. He doesn't want to scare us. But really what he's saying is that since I am inevitable, like they say, what do they say, that taxes and something are inevitable. So Krishna says that I am death and taxes is inevitable. So Krishna is saying I'm inevitable. So what do you do with something that is inevitable? You reconcile with that understanding. So that is perfection, in understanding the desire of Krishna and becoming his instrument. Now, understanding that Krishna is everything and everyone in the form of time is not really a fatalistic mood. So when Krishna shows that Bhishma and Karna and the other soldiers in the Kaurav army have already been killed by him, and then Arjun doesn't say that that's great, Krishna, all this has been taken care of, so I don't have to do anything. But what it means is that because Krishna is inevitable, the best thing for us is to align ourselves to that inevitability. So we see that in Arjun's case, it actually becomes an active mode of engagement. That in the end 18th chapter, he will say, fully convinced to fight now. He doesn't say that I already saw in the form that Bhishma and Drona are dead, so not much for me to do. And when he was fighting with his full conviction. Now it's true that if Arjun had not killed Drona, he would still have been killed. Well, Arjun didn't kill Drona. But, if Drona had not been killed by Adhishtadum, he would still be killed. But then where is the glory of Arjun? The glory of Arjun is in aligning his own efforts to the mood and the desire of Krishna. That is the essence of bhakti. So we see that in this display of bewildering sights, the notion of bhakti is being distilled out. And it will be presented in a concentrated form in the next chapter. That when one understands that Krishna is everything, when one understands that everything is happening by the desire of Krishna, then one serves Krishna. That is bhakti. So let me pause here and see if you have any comments.
Prabhuji, I have a question. This is Vikas.
Yes, Prabhu.
I'm kind of like trying to understand the Vishnu because I was like presenting the Vishnu and like from the Srimad Bhagavatam to in the like last Sunday we were discussing the same like Vishnu form. When we were like I was studying that one that chapter 2 I'm kind of like having really difficult time like basically in both of like if I compare that description with the given in the Bhagavad Gita we're bless you. So we are still like kind of visualizing in the form of like human form, right? Or is it like to let us because the way it's described in both scriptures, like it's hard to visualize that roop, right? Like to see like we kind of like thinking if I just like look at the universe, like the Milky Way, the way our like universe is, right? It's hard to visualize like where we are and the way I understood from that chapter is like basic. We were starting with the Patal Lok at the very low and Satya Lok at the like very top. So I was kind of like thinking maybe like is it it's defined as a level of how the different universe would be at different levels. If is that understanding correct or now I can see where in that roop it was described like Yamraj is it's the like at the mouth of Krishna in that Vish roop and now I can see like that way that it's defined that Vishnu Vishnu Karn and everybody is like going into the mouth of the Krishna. So I'm just trying to like relate. Like, is it like should we think in term of the universes at a different level, or like more of a like different one human big form of Krishna?
Thank you, Prabhu. So you're right. Visualizing the concept of the Vishwaroop is, in a way, it's difficult. In a way, it is given not for the purpose of. Pat Prabhu, you want to mute yourself? There's some.
Oh,
I am Prabhuji. Maybe so. Yeah.
Oh, maybe because sorry, Pat. So in the Bhagavatam itself, the Vishwaroop is described 6 times, and each time in a different way. So described from the perspective of the planets, described from the perspective of the Varnashram, the Brahmins are the head and the Kshatriyas are the hands, described from the perspective of the elements, that this is earth, this is water, described from the perspective of nature, that the trees are the hair on his body, the rivers are his veins, the mountains are his bones. So he's all that and none of that. The purpose of Vishwaroop is to anchor the persons who are more in the material conception into the spiritual conception. That's the real description. So it's not that they're incorrect, they're all correct. But the purpose is to anchor by association. That when one sees a Brahman, one says, okay, he represents the mouth of Krishna. It doesn't mean that Brahmins are physically sitting in the mouth of Krishna, but there is a certain affinity that the Brahmins are reciting the Vedas. The Vedas come from the mouth of Krishna. The Kshatriyas are protecting; they are the arms of Krishna. That way. So the Vishwaroop is real. It does not mean that it is an imaginary notion that has been established to help people. It essentially represents the sum total of everything everywhere in the universe. And that can be decomposed in so many different ways. So if you take the high level definition, that it's the sum total of everything everywhere in the universe, whether it is people, whether it is the elements, whether it is the planets, whether it is the elements of nature. And that's why we see these different definitions of Vishwarup coming that give a slightly different nuance. And every time when you read it, you will walk away with this sense, and you may have experienced it yourself, that once you read that chapter, you will walk away with that sense that yes, the sun and the moon are the eyes of Krishna, right? So when you see the sun and the moon, you say they're the eyes of Krishna. The wind is the breath of Krishna. The wind blows against you, you feel the breath of Krishna. That's the real purpose, to try and explain that, which is really speaking inexplicable. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So if there's no more, let's move on to the to the last section.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, one very small question. When Mahaprabhu showed his universal form, was it same as what Krishna showed to Arjuna?
There is so in the Mahaprakash Leela, the description is not very extensive. So it's or at least it's not clear to me whether they were the same or different. Krishna also showed his universal form to Duryodhana, but their understanding is that was also there. Of course, they say that it was different from what he showed to Arjun. But specifically, I would say I probably don't know the answer to your question.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you. Do you know, Prabhuji, how many times and to whom Mahaprabhu showed his universal form to?
So only one time that I know is as part of his Mahaprakash Leela. Not sure who else he showed to. But again, I'm not 100% about the answer. Krishna, he showed it to his mother Yashodamai, showed it to Duryodhana, showed it to Arjun, kind of showed it to Lord Brahma in the Brahma Vimohan Leela. Mahaprabhu, other than that, not sure.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you. And Prabhuji, the universal form and the forearm form that many a times both Mahaprabhu and Krishna revealed are two different things, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll see that in the coming section. Different forms.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, while explaining the universal form, like the millions of helmets and Adityas, Lord Shiva and all, like you specifically emphasized the how Vyasadeva described it. So these are not the verses, these specific section or those verses, they are not spoken by Arjun literally, but Arjun experiencing it, but Vyasadeva elaborated that description, Prabhuji?
So when Krishna revealed the Vishwaroop, part of it is described by Sanjay. So if you look at the chapter, the earlier part, so the Vishwaroop is described from three perceptions, not perceptions, by three personalities. First is Krishna himself describing it. He says that I will show you my universal form, and he gives a brief description. And then there is Sanjay describing, because Sanjay was also able to see the Vishwaroop. And then there is the prayers of Arjun, in which Arjun is describing. And Srila Vyasadeva is, of course, he is recording whatever has been said. So when Arjun is saying those verses, then he's doing what I was saying, that he's trying to describe something that is indescribable. And the same thing is being done by Sanjay. Okay, there's a comment by Shivani. that Mahaprabhu showed to Jagai Madhai when he summoned the chakra. Okay. I don't know about that, Mataji, one way or the other. So I know he showed the chakra, but not sure. Does anybody know where Mahaprabhu showed the universal form to Jagai Madhai? Yeah, something for us to. Something.
No, I only heard that like Mahaprabhu tried to invoke the chakra, but Nityananda Prabhu stopped him. But really, chakra manifested or not also, I was not so sure.
So they saw the chakra in the form of lightning. So that's my understanding, that they saw the manifestation of chakra in terms of an indescribable force of lightning that was coming to them. But yeah, I think something for us to verify. Yeah, Piali?
So, Prabhu, my question is kind of, maybe if it's out of context, just throw the question out. Like, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavatam, there are many sections which says why we should not have to fear death, the mortal death and all of it. But it never explains that why do people and animals, every living thing, have an innate fear to begin with of death? Like, it's not something that's taught typically. It's like something that's innate. But, do the Shastras say anything about that?
In the second chapter, that point is made. It's made for us to derive. When Krishna, in the Sankhya part of the chapter, he makes this point that the soul is eternal and indestructible.
Mhm.
And the body is temporary and always being destroyed. And then he says, you are the soul. So the understanding is that because it's the intrinsic nature of the soul to not know death, the soul has never experienced death. It is not the nature of the soul to see the destruction of his existence. It's the intrinsic nature, even in their embodied form, to have an aversion to death. So
Okay.
the qualities that are intrinsic to the soul
It's opposite.
you will see in all living entities, regardless of whether they're demigods, whether they are demons or humans or animals, the desire for immortality. So the nature of the soul is that it is eternal. The nature of the soul is that it is full of desires. The nature of the soul is that it has the capability of fulfilling all its desires. The nature of the soul is that it is changeless. It
Mhm.
never undergoes changes. And we see that we see that quality wherever the soul is there. We see that quality, the aversion to death, the manifestation of desires, the tendency to have the desires fulfilled, the need to seek happiness. All these are intrinsic to the soul.
Okay.
Thank you. Pat Prabhu?
Yeah, Prabhu. Few comments. Just bear with me. When you ask a question, you have any question or comments, there is a state of me which debates whether should I be asking this question and the purpose of the question. The debate is that am I going to ask a question which is very intelligent, so that it's almost not defying you. I can never do that. It's almost trying to say that, oh, let me put him on the spot and ask a question which is very intelligent, little more intelligent, theoretically speaking. It was a relative game because there was a set of audience here. And then somewhere it doesn't, it just doesn't allow me to ask that question. I was telling you just 10 minutes before, when I want to do something which is probably not right, probably, something stops me from doing it. And I see somebody watching me, somebody looking at me. What are you trying to do? Why are you doing that? So that's one observation. And about 6, 7, maybe 10, 15 sessions back, and when I was trying to understand Prabhupada, and said, you know what, Prabhu, I'm thinking so much about him and you look like him. So I say, wow, who am I to even ask a question? Before asking a question, let me understand. Am I trying to ask a question to understand, or I'm trying to put him on the spot? So that's a debate that's constantly in me, and it stops me from asking probably so-called quote unquote an intelligent question. And I know you would intelligently and convincingly respond to me, but then I stop. That's one part of it. The second part of it, about his Vishwarup, just a small observation of mine. Prabhu, when a child is playing with his dad, and I would say in this case, obviously both Arjun and Krishna are at such a different level of whatever that is, right? A higher consciousness. They're having some conversation. You said it's a conversation and all that in the battlefield. So what Krishna does to him has to be 20, 30 notches above than a common person like me, or a minuscule person like me, right? If I have to, when I was growing up, if I have to do anything with my dad, I think it was a child's play to beat me, right? Even if he's beating me, yet he's declaring that he has defeated to just get some joy out of me, saying that, oh, okay, you know what, you have won. But I know, so it's kind of, he knows that he has won, but he's making the disciple or his child make him feel that as if he's won, right? Or giving him this display of power or whatever, whether it's money or whatever it is. The child is so small, right? He's bound to appreciate. So is it one part of me tells me that no matter whatever Krishna shows it to us, through you, through any devotees, it is going to be so so infinitely large. I don't have to relate to the way he responded to, you said, to Yashoda, or to Krishna, or to Arjuna, or to even Bhishma, or to Brahma, or whomever, right? I mean, they're at such a higher level. So to display the Vishwarup, it will be so simple because we are so minuscule. I don't need to see such a big thing to really appreciate and understand him and thereby fall in love with him, because anything that he's going to show to me is going to be so infinitesimally higher than my brain can apprehend, and thereby I would surrender. So I would not look at, I'm not trying to defy you, sir. I'm just trying to say that he will, it's so simple. I'm not saying it is what is, obviously he's doing it to Arjun, who's definitely in such a high level of consciousness and everything. And thereby convincing him not, I think you get a beautiful example you said about somebody asking, hey, can you tell me what I'm thinking? These are all cheap, in sales we call it cheap sales talk. Can you tell me what's my name? What's my date of birth? What's the month? These are some trickery that people try to do through at a mental level to get some appreciation or get some, oh, wow, he knows that, he must be a great guy. But I think it's, you have said it, I'm just trying to reiterate that it's so above all those mathematical model, any mental model, because there's no limit to it. And another thing that I really want to understand, that when you say it's something called Kalu Ashmi, that I am the time, or I'm beyond time, or the time and space are within me. It's beyond Einstein, actually. It's so profound, and it's so truth at the same time. I know it's always a time, and you have a time limit. And I just want to state it again, that if somebody like you could find time to read 10 times and go over it 10 times and find time to teach us, the first part of me always comes in the picture, that what am I trying to ask him? Am I trying to ask this an intelligent question to have a debate so that I score some mark, or I'm asking him from my heart to understand and learn? When the second part is right, there's an enormous amount of realization, Prabhu. And when you speak, I know sometimes I don't participate well and or skip classes here and there because of various reasons. But there is a realization when all of us, whoever are listening, to listen carefully, you would see Prabhupada speaking. That's my submission.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing your from the heart realizations. And I appreciate all the points you've made. Questions are always welcome, Prabhu. I think the very fact that you're questioning your question, that itself means that they're sincere. And one of the persons in Krishna consciousness I admire a lot, he makes this point that there are no bad questions, there are only bad answers. So if the question is coming in from the right, from the right place, they're always good questions. So I would encourage you, and thank you for the other thoughts also. When you were saying, I was just thinking about when the first atomic bomb was exploded. Then Oppenheimer, who's considered to be the father of the atomic bomb, he actually quoted from the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Specifically said, Kalo Asmi Taimaya. He quoted some other verse where Krishna says, I forget which is the exact verse he quoted, but he quoted a verse where Krishna says that everything that is destroyed will be because of me. He had a slightly different translation that he was reading. So yeah, when we start to comprehend the universal pervasiveness of Krishna, and to a great extent, that's why Srila Vyasadeva has taken care to put this in the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata, so that it invokes these kinds of thoughts in our minds and our hearts. Yes, we can't see what Arjuna was seeing, and we can never through the words be able to understand them. But the realizations that we're getting, that is the purpose, to touch our heart. Yali says there is a book brighter than 1,000 suns about. Oh, okay, so that's what he said. That is brighter than 1,000 suns. Good.
Yes, that was the first time I had heard about flying being in Bhagavad Gita when I read the book.
Interesting.
Okay.
Another small feeling, Prabhu, is how do I say it? There is a very natural surrender to Krishna, right? I mean, I don't know how to say, but it's a when I get that, he looks so beautiful, so handsome, so magnetic. I don't know what it's like. All good qualities. I don't know. Maybe it's all the photographs and pictures that have been seen from childhood, without a very spiritual or a religious practice. I must state that I have not done scripture reading or something. You just fall in love. You see somebody, you just fall in love. Why is it that he's looking like is it a bizarre feeling that I'm not saying Prabhu, you are a male, I'm a male, at least between both of us, man to man. It makes me feel that I'm a woman and he's a man. I mean, he's such a beautiful, handsome looking man, and every girl would fall in love with a good looking, good quality, right person, man. Why does it give you a feeling that he's the man and you are the woman? It's just a feeling. I'm not trying to bizarre thought in the mind. There's no, just a feeling. is it a good feeling? Is it a right feeling? Is it a bizarre madness? What is it? Why does it appear to me? What does it make me believe that I'm a woman, which I'm not? I'm not. I'm not having any nonsensical feelings like that. I mean, in a below the radar level, but it just looks like a handsome looking, beautiful personality that I should fall in love, and makes me feel that I'm a woman, and I know I'm not a woman. Is it a bizarre thought?
It's not bizarre. Prabhupada was also asked a similar, not exact question, but similar question. What Prabhupada would say is that if this is something that attracts you to Krishna, it is a most sublime feeling. So that's how we should treasure it. Obviously at a spiritual level, there is the notion of the male and female is a bodily concept. So keeping that aside, if there is something that is attracting you to Krishna, in the sixth canto, there's this verse, Yena Kena Prakarena Mana Krishna Niveshaya, that one way or the other, Mana Krishna Niveshaya, if your mind enters Krishna, that is perfection. So if that is what is attracting you to Krishna, then you can understand that it is the result of, even though you say you haven't done, you haven't practiced this lifetime, it's the result of practicing several lifetimes. It is, attraction to Krishna at an intrinsic level. It's the result of practicing devotional service for many, many lifetimes. So treasure it as a benediction that we have earned. Okay, so let me go ahead. We are entering the last part of the section. So Arjun is now, he has, okay, if he can mute. So Arjun has now seen the universal form, the Vishwaroop, the Kal Roop, and then he reciprocates by heartfelt prayers to Krishna. The prayers of Arjuna are revealing the realizations of one who understands Krishna this way, that he is the source, support, and destruction of everything, that the pious rejoice and the impious flee in fear of him. All points that Krishna had theoretically made. He had made this points in the 7th chapter, knowing Krishna and not knowing Krishna, the pious and impious. In the 9th chapter, he had made this point that I'm the beginning, middle, and end. I support everything. So now those philosophical points are now driven into the heart of Krishna, of Arjun. And he makes the 10th chapter, Krishna says, I'm the greatest of the great. He's himself mentally echoing the same point. You're the greatest of the great, the essence of everything. That only you are worshipable. Arjuna said, why would anybody worship anybody else? Because everybody else is dependent on you. Only you are worshipable. And he says, I therefore offer my respectful obeisance unto you 1,000 times, and again and yet again. So in a mood of rapture, with devotion flowing. So this is not out of fear. So we see that when Arjun saw Krishna's universal form, then he was struck with fear. But the mood of a devotee predominates. So out of fear, you will not show this kind of love. So in the mood of devotee, he's now making this point that that I offer my respectful obeisances again and again and again. And then Arjun, being Arjun, he says that I asked to see a universal form, but I'm not really happy to see this. So can you please take away this universe? Now the universal form is eternal, doesn't mean that Krishna will take it away, but he says, I don't want to see it anymore. I want to see your personal form. So it shows the mood of devotees that they're aware of universal form of Krishna. They use it to nurture their bhakti by seeing Krishna in nature, by seeing Krishna as inevitable, inexorable time. But they're not attracted to it. The yogis are attracted to it. The impersonalists are attracted to it. The devotees are aware of it, but they are not particularly attracted to it. And we see that mood manifest in Arjun. So why does Arjun reject the universal form? Reject is a little bit, it's not the right word, but why does he indicate his preference against the universal form? So we know that Arjun had a friendly relationship with Krishna. They would wrestle together, they would sit on the same cot. Arjun says this, that we have sat together, eaten together. Arjun would sit and he would put his feet on Krishna's lap. And sometimes in wrestling, Arjun would defeat Krishna. So he had a very, very friendly relationship. And he did not appreciate the awe and the fear that the universal form inspired. It's called rasabhas. So he had a sakhyaras. And he did not appreciate this ghora ras, this ras of fear. And as a devotee, he is personally attached to the personal form of Krishna only. So he understands that the universal form rests on the personal form. Same analogy we were using, that the child might know that the grandfather is a judge and he's highly respected and he's giving all kinds of sentences. So it's not that the child is ignorant to that form of the grandfather, but because of the relationship, the child is attracted to grandfather. No interest in the judge. So that's why I said rejection is probably not the appropriate word. It was the closest that came, but lack of interest, disinterest, does not do anything for the when Krishna was in Kurukshetra and he came from Dwarka dressed as a king, the gopis from Vrindavan were there, and they see Krishna, and this is the same Krishna that who would play his flute, and they would drop everything and run to him. And they say to him, and then they say this famous verse, that you are the same, we are the same. But that mood is not there, because they were seeing Krishna in Aishwarya, as a king, and they were used to seeing Krishna as a cowherd boy. So the mood of the devotee is that they're attracted to the personal form of Krishna. So Arjun now says to Krishna, okay, I have seen enough of the universal form. Please take it back. And Krishna, of course, is always ready to reciprocate to the desires of his devotee. So Krishna first shows his four-armed form, the Vishnu form, and then he resumes, or he takes his two-armed form. And Krishna also does that to show that he is the basis of the four-armed form, that he is the basis of the Vishwarup. And this is more of a theoretical discussion. Does Vishnu come from Krishna? Does Krishna come from Vishnu? But he's saying, he's showing, demonstrating that, not that Arjuna had that doubt in him, but it's for the benefit of everybody. So just like the Vishwarup was a part of him, so he was able to display it, the four-armed form of Vishnu was a part of it, so he was able to display it and take it back. And then Krishna says to Arjuna, my devotee, you be assured, be at peace, and shows his two-armed form. And then he makes the statement that only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter in the mysteries of my understanding. So this verse is the segue into the next chapter. So when he says only by undivided devotional service, then the question is, can you speak a little bit more about undivided devotional service? And that's chapter 12, which is devotional service. So to appreciate Krishna, now Krishna was there on the battlefield, and so many people were seeing Krishna. But seeing Krishna just in terms of the light falling on the eyeballs, and seeing Krishna as a personality of Godhead are two very different things. It's like when I went to Jagannath Puri, and for whatever reasons we knew somebody, so we were able to go right into the inner sanctum, where the altar is there, Lord Jagannath is there, and you can actually reach across and touch Lord Jagannath. And apparently people do, so the priest over there, they have sticks in their hand. So I try to do that. I try to reach around and touch Lord Jagannath, and the priests have extraordinary fast reflexes. So before I knew it, there was a stick on my hand, and it's a narrow bamboo stick, but it stuns your hand for a few seconds. Doesn't hurt you, but they perfected the art. I think it's given to them in parampara maybe. But the point is that there are so many people who see Lord Jagannath. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Lord Jagannath, then he became mad with ecstasy, because he was not seeing the deity of Lord Jagannath, just the statue of Lord Jagannath. He was seeing Krishna over there. So that is what Krishna is saying over here, that only by undivided devotional service can you understand as I'm standing before you. So many people can go in front of the deity, but only the person whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of love can see the Lord standing on the altar. Okay, so quick summation, that Arjuna requests Krishna to show him his universal form, and Krishna agrees, grants him the divine vision. Arjuna first sees Krishna spread over the entire universe as Vishwarupa. Then he sees Krishna as time, Kalrupa, destroying everyone. Then Arjuna requests Krishna to withdraw his ghastly form. So ghastly is more of Prabhupada's paraphrasing, and resume his vision of the loving two-armed form of Krishna. And Krishna thus provides various ways to understand his greatness and to surrender unto him. That's the essence of why he shows the universal form. So many ways for us to fall in love with Krishna, understand Krishna, see Krishna, and surrender unto him. So the verse to learn is Mat karma kran mat paramo mat bhakta sangha varjitaha nirvai sarva bhuteshu yah samameti pandava. My dear Arjun, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculation, He who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. This is spoken in the earlier part of the chapter, but giving the reason of why Krishna is showing his universal form, because it allows the person to develop this mood of constant engagement and service to Krishna. So we can quickly go through the three sections. They were request to see Krishna, Krishna showing the universal form, and the prayers of Arjun. Why does Arjun request? Because he's inquisitive, because he wants to establish that Krishna is God, and he wants to establish future standard. Two aspects: Vishwarupa, all space; Kal Rupa, all time. How does Arjun react to the universal form? With awe and wonder, and also he is terrified. Why does Arjun ask Krishna to take away the universal form? Because he's a devotee and is really interested only in the personal form of Krishna. Why does Krishna ask Arjun to become just an instrument? So this is Krishna saying Nimit Matra, that I've killed everybody, you become my just an instrument, Nimit Matra. Because that is the perfection in understanding. That everything and everywhere activities are being done by the will and desire of Krishna. We can either align to that and take that opportunity to get closer to Krishna, or we can defy it, but the activities will still be done. Krishna's will is inevitable. Okay, so this is the end of the chapter. So realize we went a little bit over time. We'll pause over here and have our Kirtaners. Okay, we have a couple of questions. Go ahead.
Prabhu, there is a comment in the chat.
So Shivani, do you want to summarize it quickly for us?
Prabhu, I don't see her. She might have left. Oh no, she's there.
Okay, so I think it's substantiating what Shivani was saying, that when the Jagai Madai Leela was done, then Krishna manifested his four-armed, Mahaprabhu manifested the four-arm form that transformed into the Virat Roop, and Advaita Acharya saw everything there. Okay, thank you for that. I thought there was somebody else also who had raised.
Yes, Prabhu, I had a question. Did Krishna and Arjuna's relationship change after he saw the Vishwarup?
It temporarily changed. So that's called Rasa Sandhi. That the relationship of friendship, it was temporarily eclipsed by this relationship of awe and reverence and fear. And then when Krishna withdrew the universal form and manifested his two-armed form, then Arjun's steady relationship is that with Krishna's personal form. So then that relationship resumed.
Just a request from me, Prabhu. Don't want to obviously interrupt the flow. The classes that will go on Gita. Is there a class that you would take? Just interested to know a little more from you, from your articulation and experience in reading of scriptures about Radha. That's point one, not obviously in this call, whenever appropriate. Number two, when Krishna illustrates, or rather explaining to Arjun about various examples, even talking about four form, this, that, so it's like a dialogue going on to convince him to do certain things, or realize him, why doesn't he take any example of his parents and Radharani? Or he probably does, I don't know. What about he has obviously lived his life in that form till he has that dialogue and in that situation. Is there any reference to the parents and to his love, which is Radha?
Not in the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Not sure why he doesn't, but it's not there in Bhagavad Gita.
Sure. I'm sure that he knows the logic.
He probably does, you're right. Okay, very good. So we'll pause here, and for Kirtan today, we have Priya, or Priya's kids. Are you there, Priya?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
Okay. So give me 1 minute. Let me